a team because we work together. We're a team because we respect, trust, and care for each other. That really kind of stuck with me after I read it, because I really do feel that's kind of how we are. We don't just work together. We do have a lot of respect for each other. We do care about what's going on with each other, and we do have trust, because we have to have trust for the level of things that we have to get accomplished and the help we have to ask for from one another. So this really kind of resonated with me, and it's kind of stuck with me throughout the summer. I'm pretty sure the admin team memorized it because they've seen it a few times. But with this in mind, I was also thinking about, why I ask certain people to come speak to us at the beginning of the school year. And really, I typically choose people because I want us to start as a team thinking about things philosophically, kind of changing our mindset, because we have to start growing and looking at how we react to the things that are before us. We have a lot of hard work to do, and we do a really good job at it, but we also let it wear us down. And so I know that everyone in the room can probably identify somebody else sitting in the room that they watch get worn down over the course of the school year. Sometimes it happens really early. Sometimes people can hold it in and fake it until we get to like state testing, and then you fall apart, and then it's kind of an explosion by that point. But we all know it happens. We internalize a lot of the things that go on, and a lot of times we allow ourselves to feel like things are being done to us. And I think that if we really are going to be an example of what I think we are, which is that we trust each other, is that we really have to start being able to take a look at the things that are bothering us and take a look at how could we personally react differently, think about them differently, and kind of conduct our business together differently. So when I was talking to one of my friends outside of work who's not a teacher, not in education, and I was telling this person about you guys and about how I'm trying to find someone to come in and help me take you guys to a different level of how we're working together. And I had told them that, I called this person and I thought it was going to be great. He wrote this really cool book, and then, he was going to charge me $175,000 for 75 minutes. And so then, I got made fun of, like, did you call Oprah, blah, blah, blah. But what he did say is, I know this person that I don't know if he does education or not, but I know that he talks about mental toughness, which is what it sounds like you need, and it sounds like that's what your staff needs. So I went and looked him up. I looked up the Chris Doris, who my friend told me about, and I found out, he started as a social worker, and then he is a sports psychologist as well. Of course, he got his graduate degree at ASU, so that puts him like above the rest anyway. But then I also noticed that when you see what he has to say about what he does and how he believes and how he coaches people, I really realized that he can relate to who we are and what we do, because he's also been in the service industry. And I think you have to be in service to help people who are in service. Because, we do a whole lot for maybe not as much as we feel that we're worth. And we don't get a lot of thanks every day. But we have to put our heart into everything we do. And when you put your heart in, then your heart gets hurt sometimes, your brain gets hurt, you get frustrated. And so I started watching some of Chris's videos, and I realized that he kind of has a couple of the missing pieces, some of our missing pieces. So you've heard me talk about the 10-80-10 principle, where we talk about there's 10% of us that are be like, yay, I'm going to do whatever, it's going to be great, it's going to be perfect, and you're just going to jump right on board and do whatever is asked of you. Then we've got about 80% of us who are like, yeah, I don't know, it could work, might not work, I'm going to go with the flow, I like having a job, and we just go ahead and we kind of go along with it and do our best. And then we have 10% of us at any given time that are sometimes like, this is some bull nana. I'm not doing it, I think it's stupid, she or he doesn't know what they're talking about, right? And we've talked about that before, and I've talked about that all of us get in that bull nana place every once in a while, myself included. But I have some expectations, which are we don't take hostages with us to that land, and that we figure out how we're going to get out of it. But I've never really given you any tools about how to get out of it. I'm just like, go figure it out. I don't want to hear about it because you're not taking me down, right? And so, in talking with Chris, he does have some ideas and tools and strategies to help us understand how to get out of that spot that we're in. And I think that's something that we really need. Also, we talked a lot about, it's that verbal judo, okay? But we didn't talk a lot about, it's how my brain works, don't shame me. I told you a lot about what it is, and we had some examples, and you came up with some examples, but we didn't spend a lot of time getting down into it. And I really think that when we listen to what Chris has to say about the difference between an expectation and an agreement, I think we're going to start having some of those pieces of things that we know bits about fall into place. Because it's not just that the word is a different word, it really does mean and connotate something totally different when you have an expectation on someone as opposed to when you have an agreement with someone. And so I know Chris is going to talk about that. And these are like putting pieces together of things that I'm trying to put out there, but I don't have all that experience and knowledge to coach us in the proper way. So we're going to learn about it together, and we're going to get coached together through that today in his workshop. I want to tell you one last thing about Chris before I ask him to come up and take over the show. You know, he's different than the other people we've had in one very important way. All of the speakers that I invite to come here to work with us care, they're really cool, they're really fun, they're really jazzy people. They talk to me on the phone for an hour to 2 hours and email me back and forth, and then they come and do their thing. So Chris and I have emailed, we've talked on the phone a bit. He asked me if he could talk to some of you. So there's about, I don't know, 15 or 20 of you that I asked in the spring if he could call you or you could call him and you guys could talk so he could get another perspective, because, wow, he kind of thinks that maybe I'm not the only perspective that's important here. It's not just about what I want to have happen at the end. It's about what's going on in other people's minds as well. And then in addition, he asked me to come to his office so he could talk to me about what he was thinking and planning and make sure that we were on the same page with what I would like to see as the outcome from today. And you know, that really speaks to, this is a very personalized workshop for our school by someone who really does care that we really get a grip on where we're at with our mental toughness and start understanding how to use some tools and strategies so that we can be strong, that we can support one another, but that we can also be strong for ourselves so we can give our best to our kids. So I'm really excited to introduce Chris, and I'm excited for the next 3 hours that we're going to spend learning with him.
Thank you, Carrie. That's a beautiful introduction. I appreciate that.
Dr. Poe figured it out.
So let's spend a little bit of time in the beginning creating context for our morning, all right, so that we can have, so that you can take as much out of this as possible. I want to spend some time talking about what we're not doing, and then a little bit of time on what this actually is. Okay, so what this isn't is a motivational speech. And it's important for me to clarify what I mean by that, because you know, when people, I tell people I'm a speaker and I'm a mental toughness trainer, and they say, oh, so you do motivational speaking. And I always say, no, I absolutely don't do that. I do what you could consider maybe the opposite of that. I'm a trainer. This is not a speech. This is a group coaching session, right? So, very brief history of my professional evolution. I started, as Carrie said, as a social worker, working with chronic schizophrenics and drug addicts on the streets of Atlantic City, working with populations that were hurting, struggling hard. And that was a perfect training ground, like foundational place for me to start. And I only know that now in retrospect. You know, working with people who are really, really struggling, and what I learned from some of them is that for whatever, the folks who, for whatever combination of reasons, mental toughness, were able to do anything to enhance their lives, anything, to take better care of themselves, seem to be the ones that get the break. So it's like the more you take care of yourself, the more life takes care of you. Question, how many people in this room have had any formal mental toughness training in your life? 0 hands, right? That's criminal to me. Because what I mean by mental toughness is learning how to simply use your mind in ways that serve you. Right? We have a brain, we are not our brains. And our brains govern how our lives unfold. It was Buddha who said, your life unfolds according to the way that you think. Well, where's the thinking training? Where is it? You know, I went to graduate school for psychology, and I never had a class. I didn't have any classes in kindergarten, didn't have any classes in grade school, high school, college, and psychology, and graduate school even. You think that I might have had a class that taught me practical methods on how to strengthen the way that I use my mind, because my mind governs the way my life unfolds. So I have, you know, I always carry, I appreciate your comments, and I always take time before I do a talk or before I do a workshop. But I have a particularly selfish interest in this group. This is the first time in my life that I've had the opportunity to do a workshop with educators. I'm on a mission to integrate mental toughness training as fundamental curriculum. I believe that this world would be profoundly more peaceful and powerful, and the people in it would be living more powerfully if we learned from an early age how to use our minds more intelligently, more powerfully, how to choose to interpret reality in ways that have it be easier to create excellence, be successful, how to stop experiencing reality problematically and instead experience it opportunistically, and have that not be a euphemism, to have that be legit, that my auto response to everything that occurs in my life is at worst fascinating or curious, and at best enthusiastic, because enthusiasm, we're going to be talking a lot today about how to choose your moods, how to create moods, how to alter your states, your psychological states at will. Enthusiasm is one of the states that is the most intelligent state to choose. I'm going to use that language like that all day. One of the most intelligent states that you could ever choose to think your way into. Because that's what we do, is we think our way into every state that we ever experience. Now, enthusiasm is a fascinating one because what it does is it releases the neurotransmitters that are the on switches for all intelligence centers of the brain. Does anybody know what those transmitters are? What was that? Dopamine and serotonin. They travel through the dendrites. It's a neurology lesson now. But those are the chemicals. Those are the chemicals that have us be smart. Right? Enthusiasm is a fascinating word because it comes from the Greek word entheos, right? Which means the creator within. Right? En in theos, the creator within. The creator within each of us. We create our lives. We are the authors of how our lives unfold, but we are not exercising that authority to the extent that we could. Another way of describing what we're going to do this morning is unlearning. You could make the argument easily that mental toughness training is more about unlearning than it is about learning. Every one of us is conditioned powerfully by our pasts. We are exposed to ways of experiencing reality, thinking about life, and interpreting it that really have us struggle, that have us settle, struggle, or worse, suffer. So my work is about eliminating that. I believe that it is unnecessary for anyone to settle, to struggle, or worse, suffer. We create all of our own suffering with the way that we interpret reality. And again, we haven't had education on how to do that, how to strengthen the way that we interpret reality. Not formally. So this is particularly exciting for me, because what I want to do is share with you, as the user of these tools, I want to share disciplines. And that's why this is a coaching workshop. I will not leave this room without having fulfilled my pledge, which is to disseminate to you uber practical techniques, technologies, disciplines, and practices that if you, capital I, capital F, you then go integrate into your daily practice. If you integrate these tools into the way that you live, it will be impossible for your life, all disciplines, to elevate. And that's not a bold statement. That's just like saying, you know, if I let go of this Hershey's bar, I can guarantee you it's going to fall. It's not bold. That's gravity. We get it. It's a law, right? If I strengthen the way that I'm using my mind, every area of your life is going to elevate. But it takes practice, and that's important to reiterate. After today, after our morning session, you will have tools at your disposal that you can use, that you can practice. and then that you could maybe creatively integrate into your interactions with your students and your family members and anybody else that you're interacting with in the world. But first, let's have you learn the tools and practice them. So let's talk a little bit more about the unlearning. Let's just do some exercises on that. Does everybody have a handout? A packet of handouts, actually? Oh, I see that you all got the book, The Four Agreements.
Yeah,
That's phenomenal. Has anybody here ever read that before? Yeah, I love Don Miguel Ruiz. He's a phenomenal author. You're going to love that book. It's powerful. So the first page of the handout, does anybody not have a packet? Okay, so the top page is a question. Now, I want you to just please listen. I'm going to say, I think almost verbatim what's on the page, but listen to what I'm saying. I want to ask everyone to think of a number that corresponds to the most money that you can imagine getting a hold of under any circumstance in a year's time. I'm going to repeat that. Think of a number that corresponds to the most money that you can imagine getting a hold of under any circumstance in 1 year's time, and then write that number down on the page. Okay. So what do you got?
200,000.
200 grand. What else?
0.
What? That's a first. That's a first.
I think you have a hidden agenda.
Oh, I totally have a hidden agenda. It's not hidden anymore. No, I definitely have an agenda. 100,000? 200 million? A million? Okay, now, with the exception of 0 of you, because it won't work mathematically, can everyone else, can you double your number and still imagine that? Can anyone not do that? You cannot. What was your number? Okay. So you guys, you know where we're going with this. However, I must say that that's not an actual amount. That's the theoretical. But you know where we're going with this. But however, there's still an answer. Like there is a number beyond which you may not be able to imagine. But everybody can double, everyone else can double your numbers. So somebody said 200 million. So you can imagine 400 million?
Yeah, as long as that includes by the lottery.
Well, see, that's an easy, right? There's a way.
And I took taxes.
And see, and, well, what did you say?
I took the taxes out.
That's
I know it's
after tax.
400 around there.
Right. So no one should be able to double your number. So no one, no one in this room answered the question. Everyone.
Because it's the most amount of money.
That's right.
And if it's the most that you can imagine, then you can't possibly double.
You shouldn't be able to add a penny to it. So this is a fascinating phenomenon. Because every person in this room unconsciously translated the question that I articulated twice verbatim into an entirely other question. Into another question. What was the question that you answered?
What could you realistically imagine?
Yeah, that, right. But some of you probably translate it into what could I earn? What could I make from the wages that I'm accustomed to from this job, right? You put all these parameters around it, you translated it. And I do this all the time. I do it for, you know, in rooms full of hundreds of people, and the same thing happens. There's nothing unique here. But we need to slow it down and just identify what is that. So why did that happen? No one answered the question. You know, there's actually only one legitimate response. Well, you're close. And you know this is so great because I've been using this exercise for so long. And one time I was meeting at my office with a prospective coaching client. And for whatever reason, she brought her little daughter. I guess she couldn't get a babysitter or something. So she's just coloring on the floor. And I'm talking to the mom about, you know, how a lot of the coaching is about unlearning stuff and freeing yourself from the conditioning of your past that doesn't serve you, that has you play small and think small and all that. And I asked her the money question I just asked you. And as the little girl's coloring, as soon as I finished the question, you know, what's the most money that you can imagine getting a hold of under any circumstance in a year's time? Little girl goes, all of it. That's the only right answer. It would be like asking how many pieces of candy could you imagine dumping onto the floor? What would have had to happen in your life for you to go, maybe on a good day I'd say 60%. What would have to, I mean, you would have had to have been brainwashed into thinking that there's something difficult about moving candy out of a basket onto a floor. Well, guess what? You're brainwashed. We are. We're all in a brainwashed state. Sometimes when people say, what do you do for a living? I say, I'm an unbrainwasher. I help people discover the beliefs that have taken up residence in our minds that govern the way we act in limiting ways and getting rid of them. Reauthoring those stories. That's the artwork of this, is the inner world, is paying attention, heightening awareness, right? So you can even know what's going on in there that's governing what goes on in your out here. I love using mantras, and the mantra for that is the outer world is a reflection of the inner world. Right, so what I got going on in my life is the direct result of what I've got going on in my mind. That's what you were talking about, Carrie, when you were talking about the distinction between ownership living and victim living. Right, victim thinking, which we've all learned, would have us become vulnerable infinitely and reactive to what goes on in the world. And we don't want to be that. That doesn't serve us. That doesn't have us be amazing. That has us be vulnerable. Right? It has us be puppets on strings. And like this, well, that's what the term victim of circumstance means. That the circumstances in my life are governing how I show up, how I experience, my ability to even choose joy. So this is like, speaking of, there's an interesting story that illustrates how we all learn to be victims of circumstance, right? Little girl comes home from school, and she's all smiles, right? And her mom's like, oh, wow, honey, look at you, you're so happy. What happened? Did you make a new friend at school today? And the little girl goes, no, there weren't any new students at school today, Mommy. And she goes, well, what happened? Why are you so happy? You guys got cupcakes at recess, didn't you? And she goes, we didn't have cupcakes today, Mommy. And she says, well, I don't know, why are you so happy? You got a sticker for your spelling quiz. And she's like, Mom, we didn't have a spelling quiz, damn it. She didn't say it like that. If she's from Jersey like me, she probably would have said it like that. But now, do you see what is happening here? This is the amazing nature of sneaky conditioning that none of us are exempt from. This is a loving exchange between this precious young girl and her primary role model in the universe, her mom, and embedded within the sweet dialogue is a disastrous learning. Does anybody know what it is? What is it?
She's training
Yeah.
the daughter to find joy in what other people do instead of just being happy.
Bingo. Did you hear that? To summarize, she's teaching her daughter to be a victim. She's teaching her daughter that there's no such thing as causeless joy. She's teaching the daughter that you don't just choose that. Not in this damn house. Honey. So she's teaching her a lot, and it's all unconscious. She's not only teaching her that you can't just choose that state of joy. You can't just opt into it because it's there. Like just picking, like I go over to the basket and pick what I want. Say this is a basket of emotions. What are you in the mood for? Like, why would you pick a Kit Kat if you hate chocolate? Well, why do you choose frustration? Why do you choose anxiety? You're choosing them, just like that. So what's the answer? That's actually a real question. Okay, so, because we don't, I love that answer. So what do you mean?
Well, we just don't know any better. We're responding the way we've always responded, or people around us have responded. As you said, we don't talk to you about how to respond differently, why we.
Okay, so you could say it's mindless. We're not, so, and I love that word for this. It is mindless. I am not using my mind. I'm not exercising the ability that we all possess, which is choice. You know, Freud screwed us up a little bit there with the whole stimulus response program. He's like, you know, this thing happens and then there's a response, and then that happens and there's a response, and that's a fixed response, and just deal with it. Go get a therapist, pay out the butt forever to lay on a couch and have them, you know, ask you questions about your relationship with your parents. Well, the piece in the middle, I'm allowed to make fun of that, by the way, because I was a licensed therapist for a very long time. And I have a serious problem with the way I was trained to waste people's time. Saying. By focusing on the problem, as opposed to teaching them how to redirect. So many of the issues that people go to therapy for will be completely addressed by what we're covering today. That's why I gave up my licensure. Because I wasted a lot of people's time. That's why I switched over from counseling, right, working with people on ameliorating their problems, to coaching, which is about creating their dreams. And I use some of the techniques I learned in undergrad and graduate school, but it's not therapeutic. There's no pathology in this work. There's just enthusiasm, it's just excitement. Right? So yeah, I learned how to stop choosing states that have me settle, struggle, and worse, suffer. So the answer is because we learned to. Right? Like the little girl. Like we all have learned similarly. And we haven't, and this is what I started to say in the very beginning, is that there weren't classes that taught us how to do this stuff all the way through so that we would never get rusty. Right, to continuously practice, strengthening the way that I went to India to do some study, and oh man, this is so amazing. This is called the Oneness University in southern India, outside of Chennai. And that is by far, I've done a lot of stuff in my life on personal development, and that is by far the most powerful. The Oneness University. And rankings, public rankings, shaming. You know, if you do test poorly, you know, it's like classes, testing, and then posting publicly of the results. And if you perform poorly, you could be just given up by your family, go into the sex trade, and that's not an exaggeration. So this guy's like, this is ridiculous. We need to come up with a new way of educating our children. So what he did was he interviewed the parents, and he asked them one question. And he said, would you be happy if your child chose to become a janitor. And if they had any answer other than, if that's what they want, of course, then they were not invited. Because he believes that that child has too much work to do because of the bad parenting. So we would only invite children who were raised in environments where they were trusted for their own judgment. So these kids grew up, the school, their performance was off the charts, it became very threatening to the government, so they pulled the charter. Oh, before that though, but when he started, he got all the kids together. This is so neat. And he got all the kids together who were invited to be the students, and he said, hey, let's make up our rules. And they're all going, is he serious? He's like, yeah, come on, you guys are going to make up the rules for yourselves. And they're all freaked out by that. No one wants to, they're like, is this real? Is this a trap? And finally, one courageous kid raised his hand. He goes, yeah, what's your idea? And he said, can we have no tests, please? And he said, I love that idea, but we have to. I would prefer not to. But in order for us to maintain our charter, in order for us to even be allowed to exist, we have to do that. But that's the kind of thinking I'm looking from y'all, so keep going. And then they all warmed up, and Mom was like, so then can we just test as many times as we need to get it all right? And he goes, yes. So he created this unbelievably safe environment where the kids weren't afraid anymore of failure. Right? And that means they're playing, in like sports terms, on offense. That activates creative genius. This is why they thrived, because the threat was gone. They weren't in prevent defense mode. They weren't afraid of being stupid. They weren't afraid of failing. They weren't afraid of looking foolish, like having a dumb answer. He did a phenomenal job of creating like the safest place for these students in which they could just express themselves creatively without fear. Then they got shut down because it became a threat. They did so well. It became a threat to the government. And, no worries, who is it? Maybe it's important.
That's probably a parent. That's okay.
I trust things like that. I believe in synchronicity, so let me know if it's relevant. We can include them. Put it on speaker. And we'll ask them the money question. So what he did was he started the Oneness University. So it evolved from a school into this, which is now literally a city. So the teachers, which they call dosages over there, are all the former students of his. They're truly enlightened people. And what I mean by that is nothing grandiose whatsoever. The word enlightened doesn't mean something woo. It just means like light. Like Carl Jung used to say, shine the light of consciousness onto the darkness, and that's just the awakening process. It's just strengthening the way that you use your mind so you live more powerfully. It's that. Bringing the unconscious into the conscious. Bringing what's in the dark, the unconscious, into the conscious realm so we can work with it on purpose. Right? So these young teachers are also peaceful. They're also, I remember one night I was standing out front of the dorm where I was staying, and my friend that I was visiting there with, a friend of mine from India who turned me on to the place, knew the teachers, just had been going there for years and years and knew everyone. So we're just standing out front at night, hanging out, and here comes the #1 teacher and his best friend, who's the founder's son. The #1 teacher, his name is Anandagiri Ji. Everybody has their name end in G, J-I. Like I'm Chris G. It's just a thing. It's like dude, but more respectful. So Anandagiri Ji, that's Sanskrit. That means his name is Mountain of Bliss. All right. Mountain of Bliss. What's your name? So these folks, because they've been involved in practicing, examining the behavior of their minds and then strengthening it for their whole lives, these folks don't experience inner conflict. Can you imagine that? In fact, I asked my teacher, I said, how do you define enlightenment? And she just smiled, and they're always smiling. And she thought for a while, and she was in no hurry. Perfectly comfortable with the silence because there's no inner conflict. So there's no problem. And then after a while, she looked up and she said, having no internal conflict. And I thought, that is just the coolest answer ever. Can you imagine your life? Can you imagine that? And that's actually a good idea. We're going to do some imagery later. We're going to talk about that as an amazing tool that we all have access to, that we're all actually using in ways that make us struggle, ironically. Can you imagine, just for a second right now, how are you different and how is your life different if you have no internal conflict? Can you envision it? No? I believe it. That's tough, right? Because it's like, you know, Eckhart Tolle is one of my favorite teachers, and he asked this great question: how much of your life do you spend in a state of wishing stuff was different? Like, oh, I don't know, all of it. Most, really, truly, you think about that. That's amazing. That's an amazing question. And it points out an amazing phenomenon. Like, oh my God, most of my waking life, I have a problem with reality. Where's the fun in that? And we learn that, right? Because that's not really true when we're younger. Right? Like the little girl has causeless joy. That's an important point. That's our like natural state, is to choose, is to be able to exercise our ability to choose elevated states. And I absolutely believe that is what we gravitate until we are well educated to do otherwise. Because it's just nicer. Right? And all of my experience in human peak performance, which I've been doing basically just forever, my entire professional career in some form or fashion, the better we feel, the better we are at everything. Like all research uniformly agrees with that. The higher the state, the better our performance in anything. I mean, if you think about just in your own experience, in any kind of performance, whether it's athletics or music or theater or anything, dance. If you think about your best ever performances, those experiences were characterized by extremely, what I call high-grade states, most of which are super pleasant. Like nobody, I used to work exclusively with athletes for a long period of time. And I've never heard it or read it anywhere where an athlete described their best ever performances as painful or horrible. Where I was totally pissed off. No, that doesn't ever happen. So therefore, we have great incentive to get better at feeling better. And that's really what we're going to do. That's part of most of what we're going to do today. In fact, if I was only allowed to ever do anything, if I was only allowed to coach people on one thing, if I was only allowed to write on one thing, and if I was only allowed to do public workshops on one thing, it would be this thing. It's going to take up half of the morning, which is learning how to voluntarily elevate your state. And then as a result, watch everything get easier and more pleasant. It's that simple. And it is that simple. And I love that it's that simple. I love that. There is nothing complex about anything that we're going to do. All the complexity is taken care of for us. It's like the software. It's in there. It's prepackaged. We just use it. But we're not going to use the software if we don't even know it's there, if we don't even know that it's like an option. All right, so let's do another exercise. Let's do the next one. This one, it's likely that you've seen this before, but I still do it. This is an old one, but even if you have seen it, do it anyway. And if you get the response, if you get the solution to this, just turn your page over so so the other teachers around you won't cheat off your paper. Because that's a thing I hear. Well, I guess not in your experience. Do you ever have students actually together at one time? Or is every, you do?
Not for school.
For lessons for school. So is it possible to cheat? Oh, well, I just was like, are you stupid? Well, that's interesting. Okay, so maybe we'll get that. All right, so here's the exercise. All right, the object is to connect all 9 dots. All right, but I'm going to give you 3 restrictions. All right, those are just only 3 rules beyond which you can do anything to get it done. All right, you got to connect all 9 dots, but you can only use 4 straight lines. You can only use 4 lines, and they all got to be straight ones. All right, you can't lift the pen off the page once you start, and there's no back tracing. All right, I'll repeat that. So the object is to connect all 9 dots, but you can only use 4 straight lines to do it. You can't lift the pen off the page once you start, and there's no back tracing. Got it? All right, have at it. And if you get the solution, then just turn it over. Okay, does everyone have the solution now? You're like jerk. Okay, here's a hint. And it ain't much of a hint, but whatever, it's a hint. If you're struggling with this, it's most likely, almost probable, that it's because you are self-imposing unconsciously a 4th restriction beyond the 3 that I gave. And it's that 4th assumption, the unconscious restriction that you're placing on it, that is absolutely forbidding you from being able to see what is honest to God, a super simple solution. So it's just like how you translated the money question into, a question about possibility, your estimate of possibility versus imagination, because that's what you did, right? When you translated the money question, the question was about, it's like the operative word was imagine, right? What's the most you can imagine? But we didn't hear that. You thought, what's the most that you think you could earn? Based on what you've learned is possible. So in much the same way, if you're not seeing the solution, it's because you are also translating, you're self-imposing a 4th restriction. Has anybody got the answer that's never seen this before? And you've never seen it before? Can I see it?
She totally hit it.
How many? That's a lot of lines. 4, you can only use 4 lines. And they all got to be straight. That's a lot of lines. But I love that. I gotta reward that though, because she's like, hell yeah, I got it. I love that. No, I love that. And I think we'd all do better to, seriously, is to like I was talking about in that school in India, it's like, I got it. I got this. That's wrong. Okay. And there's no shame. And I'm not afraid to try again. And be so bold to say, I think I got it again. Okay, anybody else? Anybody? And this is the first time you've seen it? You got it, brother. Would you please show us the solution?
Where at?
Up there. You don't have to.
Can we fold the page too? No.
No. No. Yeah. Yeah, got it. All right, watch this. You're having aha experiences. Hold on to that. That aha experience is huge. Ah, soak that up. Thanks, brother. Way to go. How about a little love? That is, no joke, totally rare. That's totally rare. So go ahead and feel good about that. It is very uncommon for an adult who has never seen this exercise to get it so quickly, too. I mean, that's really rare. I do this every time. Well, you show me that later. I'm interested in that. That's very creative. No, seriously, that's a cool solution. So, what was the fourth rule that you imposed upon yourself? You saw a boundary that did not exist, and you obeyed it. Brainwash. Isn't it interesting? Like, be excited about this. Right? Because like you can assume by virtue of you being in this room, you got a pretty good life, right? And it can get like way better. If I free my mind up. There's this interesting thing about circus elephants, and I love this. That's a thing of the past, or very soon will be. But when it was still commonplace for circuses to use elephants, when they would get a new elephant, the trainer had to keep it somewhere, right, when they're not training it or when it's not in the show. So that what they would do is they would just put a rope around one of its legs, tie it to a stake, and stick it in the ground outside. And elephants have amazing memories, right, which is what permits them to migrate across Africa and back on virtually the identical route. Because they remember points, they remember things, right? And sometimes that memory serves them, and sometimes that memory doesn't. Because what would happen here is the elephant would very quickly learn the range that it's free to explore within, right? The length of the rope. So it'd be a big circle. And the length of the rope is the radius. So after it learns that distance, it stops even trying to go beyond that because it knows it's got its markings. Like, I can't go over there. This is the end. At that point, the trainer can take the elephant over to the stake and not even attach the rope because the elephant has already learned the boundary. The elephant is free. There's nothing stopping it from going anywhere now except its mind, except what it's learned. The learned boundary, like this one that we self-impose, right? This is actually the origin of that cliche. You know what the cliche is? Yeah, think outside the box. Not many people know that. So if you want to just have some fun, mess around, next time you hear somebody say that, it's just someone else in context of a conversation says, oh yeah, no, you just need to think outside the box. That's so interesting. Where does that come from? And they're just going to make up some shit. Just let them go. It'd be very impressive if they said, well, actually, there's this cool exercise that illustrates the conditioning of our past. And you're like, whoa. Probably not going to say that. So, why is it that we want to be enthused about the fact that we're in a brainwashed state? All of us are. Why is that good news? Because we can, yes, that's who said that? Because we can change it. Because, as human beings, I believe that we're designed to grow, and so we've got lots of growth opportunity, and that's amazing. We can create much more and more joy, reward, right? Satisfaction, enthusiasm, peace, confidence, competency, and all the high-grade states, and then also be better at everything. Oh, all right, sign me up. I'll take it. All right, so you want to do some work?
Yeah.
Woo! All right, let's get into the meat of it now. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions at this point? Because we've all been doing just theory so far. We're going to start to practice now. Is the next page the power of thought?
Yes.
Yay. So at the top of the page, towards the top of the page, it says Freedom Formula. So the title of the page is The Power of Thought. That's the document that we're referring to right now. The Power of Thought. And as I said earlier, there are these great phrases, and it's been articulated so many different ways by so many different brilliant humans over history, like I mentioned the Buddha one, which is your life unfolds according to the way that you think. William James, one of the fathers of modern day psychology, is as a person thinketh, so shall they become. Right? Even in more recent stuff like the movie The Secret, thoughts become things. The Secret, by the way, which I think is good, but it's like baby food for training your mind, because it relies almost entirely upon affirmations, not ownership and action, but that's a conversation for another day. So, at the top is the Freedom Formula. And this formula is what we're really going to learn. This is the thing. Like this is the mother lode. This is the cornerstone, the foundation really of all inner world training or mental toughness training. Right? And the reason that I call this formula the Freedom Formula is because when you really get it at the deepest level, and then you apply the practice that accompanies this, then you are freeing yourself from the conditioning of your past that would have you translate the money question, right? That would have you self-impose boundaries, that would have you settle, struggle, and suffer. That would have you use your mind in ways that cause that settling, struggling, and suffering, right? So really, that's the unlearning. Like we're freeing ourselves from the brainwash. We're unbrainwashing ourselves. But it all starts with our thinking, right? How I think governs my states, my emotional states, or my moods. What we're doing here today, you could say, is simply becoming emotional masters, which said another way is becoming thought warriors. Because those two things are inextricably connected, instantaneously and inextricably connected. My thoughts and my states. So let's just do an experiment on that. All right? I want you to think of something that happened in your life that you would interpret as truly tragic. And I want you to really just let yourself, just for a couple seconds here, like go back into that memory. Like really go back and re-experience that. Let yourself do that. And as you're doing that, pay attention to the unique state that instantaneously accompanies that unique selection of thought content. Again, that's mindful language, because you're choosing that thought content. That memory is a thought that you're choosing. When you choose it, pay attention to the state that instantly accompanies it. Now, we're going to change channels, just like on a remote on TV. Now I want you to think of an event that happened in your life that was absolutely hysterical. Something totally hilarious. That was quick. There may or may not be an inside joke at that table. But as you do that, as you let yourself go ahead and change the content of your mind over to the other end of the spectrum, right, to something really funny as hell. Now notice the state, if you're doing it, notice this, and it can't not happen. The state that instantaneously accompanies that choice of thought content, that particular memory. Okay, so describe the first memory. Give me some words. What were the states that you felt as you chose to fill your mind with the memory of what you consider to be a tragic event? Grief, hopelessness, overwhelm, confusion, sorrow, stress. This is perfect. because those are all obviously what we could call low-grade states. They're unpleasant. Those deactivate intelligence. They release different chemicals like cortisol, which is good if you're like in a survival mode, or if you're a mixed martial artist. There are uses for them, like an offensive lineman in football. You know, but not if you're trying to be like intelligent. Not if you're trying to be masterful. Not if you're trying to be creative. Not if you're trying to be generally successful. So now give me some descriptors of this. Of the opposite, like when you chose to fill your mind with lighter content. How would you describe the state that immediately, because of that choice? Glee. That's an underutilized word. Wasn't this a show? Is that show like long gone? Yeah. Was it a musical? Yeah. Was it a show? It was a TV show. Was it good?
No, I don't know.
No. That's the irony. Glee sucked. That's funny. I think it's funny. What else? Glee. What else? Happy. Sorry? Relaxed. Right on. Yeah, and it is instantaneous. And isn't that fascinating? You know, be interested in this, because you know what you just did? You just did something amazing. You just traveled the entire spectrum of available human states. And how long did it take to go from one end to the other? Instantaneous. Isn't that amazing? Class over. There you go. That's how you change your states. It ain't hard. It ain't rocket science. It's even more profound, though. It is. You can alter your state. And you have, please take this with you. You have the ability to access any emotional state always, in every moment of your life, no matter what the circumstance. Do you buy that? Now, we've got thought habits that forbid us to do that. So we need practice. We need to exercise that. All right? And I'm exercising it always. Always. I like to say that the most mentally tough people, also the happiest, and usually the most successful people, those things are all also inextricably connected, choose to exist in a perpetual state of self-inquiry. Meaning, we're always asking the questions like, what state am I thinking myself into right now? Is this state serving me? Could I think better in this moment? What state would be ideal for this circumstance? How am I interpreting this event? So on my way here, you know, I have a home office, so I almost never drive in traffic. That was definitely by design. Well, you know where I'm going with this, right? This morning. So I drove from Chandler. So I got on the 101, and I anticipated that didn't even exist when I was in graduate school, and maybe there was just a boatload of traffic. I know that. I don't know what was causing it. And oh, did you really?
Yeah, it was right in the middle lane. 3 cars.
No kidding. Well, that explains it. So I got off on 60 because my maps told me to.
Yeah.
You can save several minutes. Okay, so I did it, and 60 was actually wide open. But before I got there, so when I got on at Chandler, it was like wide open. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is awesome. I'm going like 75 miles an hour. It's incredible. That lasted for like a mile, right? And then hit the wall, right? And my auto response was, shit. And I do this for a living. Am I losing credibility right now? No, I'm trying to identify. But that is my auto response. Because I'm not finished with having problems with reality. I'm not done there. I'm not there yet. I'm not like the Dasajis in India. I'm working on it every day. Right? So my auto response was, this is a problem. This sucks. So I really love being early. I don't do late. I design my life in a way that I'm never late. So I plan to be places way early. So I told you I'd be here by 8. And I texted you when I thought I might not. I actually did get here by 8.
You were here just
Thank you for the positive reinforcement. I don't have to go to the principal's office yet. So, but isn't it interesting? Like that it's just automatic that this is a problem. There's no problem. Where's the problem? That's right. That is boom. That's right. I created it. Who said that? Well done. Redemption. That's so great. No, yeah, right. I did. Yeah. Maybe. So, I'm sorry?
It's not like your section would start without.
What if it would? What if I didn't leave in an hour? What if I didn't leave myself an hour buffer? What if I just thought it's going to take 15 minutes to get here, I'll leave at 8:45?
Then you would have adjusted your life, you would have talked later.
Would it have been a problem if I showed up late?
I would make you feel very awkward.
You can't make me feel anything. No, here's the point. Yeah, I believe that. I would have created an environment that would make it really easy for you to think like shit and feel really bad. That's the only power that she would ever have over me. Do you hear that, though? This is a really important point, joking aside, is that nobody can make you feel anything. Eleanor Roosevelt used to say that all the time. Right? She used to say specifically about inferiority, but it's true for anything. Like no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Well, no one can make you feel anything, period. You create that with your interpretations, with your thoughts, right? So let's go ahead and play that through that scenario. I get here late. You're like, where the hell is the dude who's so undercharging? If this person is charging 175, what? I am totally raising my fees. That's amazing. $175,000 for 75 minutes. This is incredible. I feel like such a slouch right now. Yeah, I was simultaneously pumped. I'm like, wow, this is very affordable. And why am I charging so little? So, so that's so funny. Like this, it's like it made you feel. It made me feel. Those sentences are never true. Oh, he makes me so angry is never a true statement. It sounds unromantic, but it's true. But nobody can make you happy. You could just do things that would, like I was joking, but serious. You could do things that make it easy for people to think in certain ways, but it's all, the thinking is on them. We have these thought habits, though, like I have in traffic. Right? That most of us have. Like, who here has a problem with traffic? Who here, as soon as you get in traffic, you're like, oh man, this sucks? Who doesn't? How do you do that?
Because if I'm alive.
Word. I love that. 'Cause
When I get lost, I don't know how to get any further.
yeah, baby. Woo-sa. That's beautiful. You know, and that's what the Dasajis in India were like. Like, they're just laughing all the time, and they're always saying the phrase that they articulated the most frequently, at least the one that stood out for me the most, that stuck, is, what could be wrong with your truth? Like, what could be wrong with your truth? Like, there's no problem. There's no problem. Oh, this is the mantra that I thought of a second ago. There is no problem in the world. The only problem is the way I see it. Right? There's no problem in the world. The only problem is the way I'm interpreting it. Right? And I really want us to practice taking absolute, complete ownership of that. If we can do that in here today, this whole day was a massive success story. Okay, while I'm thinking of it, here's an invitation to you all, and I really hope that you'll accept this. Stop complaining. I'm not kidding. Start eliminating complaining as a behavior from your life. Just have it, start stopping it. Start eliminating, because it's like you can't just like stop. It's like a boat on water, it doesn't just stop. It comes to a stop. Right? You can stop giving it momentum. What's that? See, that's what right? Right? I wish we all had that. Okay, but let's model it first. Okay? Let's be, that is the most, you know that's the most powerful way that human beings learn, right? It's not through like didactic learning like what you guys do and what I do. It's effective, but it isn't the most. You know, the most effective way for human beings to learn is through modeling. By far. You know, we witness people who we respect behave, and then we mimic that. So we need to be the models. We need to integrate this practice. So stop and just model it, right, for people. So when, like, well, how different is your household when you don't complain? Just think about the effect. That's amazing, right? Like you never complain. Can you visualize that? It's the same thing. Nope. When do we get to the realistic content, dude? Okay, so like, do you think that if you got paid to, if you're going to get paid $1,000 to complain less today than you did yesterday, could you pull it off? Oh, okay, now it's realistic. Oh, I'm sorry. Right? You know you could. Right? And then if you got paid $1,000 every day to complain less the following day, could you do it?
I wouldn't say anything.
Well, no, that's interesting. She said, I just shut my damn mouth. I wouldn't say a thing. However, you know what's interesting about that is that the vast majority of our complaints happen silently in our minds. They're not even articulated. That's the internal conflict. Just sometimes we say it out loud. You know? So, but could you? This is a really important question. Could you do it if you had the incentive? Could you reduce the frequency of complaining day by day until you think you extinguished that? You think it's a possibility? Yeah. Do you see why you would ever want to do that? Tell me why you would want to do that. And so you would be changing, this is perfect, so you're practicing changing the way you're perceiving the world. Why is that, why? Okay, so I'm happier. I spend more time on the things I like. So you know what goes along with that is excellence. Then what an amazing combo platter. Isn't it awesome that as human beings we evolved in a way that it's true that the better I feel, the better I am at things. Isn't that great? So again, we have tremendous incentive to get good at feeling good. And again, that's what we're working on here. So that's my invitation. That's my first invitation to you as a legitimate practice is start eliminating complaining. Now, that would be sort of rookie of me to just leave it there because there should be a suggestion on what to do instead. Right? Because a complaint, by definition, is just a low-grade interpretation of reality. It's me having a problem with what is. Right? So does anybody have an idea on what you could do instead? Let's use the traffic example because it's a simple one and it's a popular one. It's a good starting place. Complaining about traffic is a great training example. So what is an alternative? Yes. Okay, like what? What's find the positive? Like? Okay. More time to talk to my friends. How about any other alternative interpretations? Like, this is better than death? Okay, I guess that works. It qualifies. This is better than dying. That's true. It could be worse. I'm not the one in the accident. Okay, wait, I like this. Could you say that louder?
Change the things you can.
Okay, I love that so much. So which I can never do when I'm in a state of complaint. That's huge. So what you said was change the things that you, instead of complaining, change the things that you can. So in other words, what is it that I have control over? Right? So in many, many circumstances, I have control over very little. But you know what I always have? Yep. I always have control over my interpretation of that's the freedom. That's the best part. Is that that's always true. I always have that. But if I forget it, then I am locked in the prison of my conditioned mind, and I am a victim of circumstance. Right? So in that same scenario, what might I have control over?
As far as driving in.
Yeah, I mean, yep.
Your route on your phone, change the route.
Yeah. Which I did.
Yeah, maybe even leave a little bit earlier. Change that.
I left an hour early for a 15-minute drive, but I still made it on time. But that's actually huge. Right? It's just well, why did I do that? Because I made that a habit, though. Right? I got tired of being late. One time, a friend of mine, we were having lunch up in Scottsdale, and he was 20 minutes late and never even called. I'm like, this is nonsense. So I got up and left, and I drove home. And he called me. He's like, dude, where you at? I'm like, I'm almost home. He goes, you're kidding me. I'm like, no, man. I got to thank you, though. And he's like, oh, man, here comes the sarcasm. And I said, I'm being dead serious. I said, you know, your decision today has actually changed my life because I will never disrespect somebody like that. So I pledge now to never be late, and I haven't. I have never been late. That was like 3 years ago for anything. But it required me to really ask myself, to examine, well if I was going to get paid $1 billion in like 5 years from now, and all you got to do is keep living the way you are, but never be late for anything, ever, what would I have to do? And it wasn't that hard to figure out. It was just schedule stuff different. Like leave earlier, you know, and space out my appointments and things like that. But that's something that you have control over. So isn't it funny that people know they get in traffic every day, and like, God, and they expect it to be different. Damn it. I'm sorry, I talked over you. I didn't.
But then when there are things that you can't change, so there was nothing else you could change, you changed the way that you
So this is yeah, that's perfect. So when you're at the point where you believe that there's nothing else in your control, and we're often very wrong about that, but whatever. If I am convinced that there's really nothing else that I can change about this scenario, then at a minimum, and I actually want that to be more than the minimum, I can change my interpretation of it and not have a problem. So gratitude is a highly intelligent, always accessible state. Every state is always accessible. But gratitude is a phenomenal default response to a complaint. And we're going to do an exercise a little bit later on called The Problem is the Gift, where we're going to actually literally stretch our minds, expand our thinking again. And I say again because like we did as children naturally before being well educated about our limitations. We're going to practice reinterpreting things that we habitually complain about. So be thinking as we're going through, you know, what are the things that you complain about most frequently? Like if you had like a complaint monitor, what would the subject matter be, subjects that you complain most frequently about? So just be thinking about that because we're going to actually do work on that. And the work that we're going to do is you're going to literally be changing your interpretation like diametrically, like 180 degrees. And again, it's really important for me to say that this is, when people aren't getting this, their what's the word? Their points of opposition, their objections are like is this like kumbaya? Or am I looking through like life through rose-colored glasses? I'm like, nah, you're not getting it at all. We're actually taking the glasses off. like the glasses, your conditioning of the past is what's having you interpret reality in a distorted way. We're removing that so you can actually experience reality as it is, which isn't problematic. The glasses are what's having you distort your perception of reality, right, into problems. Do you get that? That's liberating. So, you know, sometimes when I'm doing these talks and we get right about here, and sometimes someone who's not getting it will say, so wait a minute, so you're telling me that like I'm driving to work, I have a really important, so I do a lot of work with sales teams, and they're intense people. And they're much like, they are the corporate athlete, really. And they're like, so you're telling me, and I get a flat tire on the way to a huge customer meeting. That was very Trumpy, wasn't it? That's messed up. Can we delete that? Huge. So the guy's asking like, oh, so I get a flat tire, I'm on my way to this meeting, and I'm like supposed to be happy? And I say, you've got it all wrong. You're not supposed to be anything. Like by virtue of you even articulating the question has me know that you're totally missing this point. You're not supposed to be anything ever. You can be anything always. You get a flat tire, I don't know. I don't care how you are. How do you want to be? I don't give a damn how you are. No offense, but it's your call, bro. I'm just here saying that you have options, and they're unlimited. How would you like to be? What do you want to order off the menu? Like the emotional menu, and there's every single state is on the menu. What do you want? So as you're eliminating complaints, gratitude is just a suggestion, but it's a phenomenal one. Is to look at, so like in traffic today, you know, I caught myself, and that's the practice, is catch, own, and replace. We'll get to that in a second. It's at the bottom of the page. I'm going to catch myself when I'm thinking poorly, when I'm feeling poorly, and then I want to upgrade it. And you can use gratitude, which is, I'm very thankful for this amazing car that I have. I'm thankful for this 101 that people had to toil over. That's an amazing road, by the way. If you drive around the world, like the roads here are amazing. They're the best roads in the world that I know of. They're amazing. They're so wide and clean and well marked, and it's like safe, and they're even quiet. They make them with tar with like rubber in them, so they're not even noisy. It's amazing, you know. And we're all whining, driving in our air-conditioned cars. It's a huge plus. There's so many pluses. If there are, and there can only be pluses. That's a possibility. It's an option. It's an option. All right, there's a Byron Katie. Has anybody ever heard of her? Byron Katie? Okay, I highly recommend her. Read this book, Loving What Is. That's a great title. Yeah, it's a funny name because her first name is Byron, B-Y-R-O-N, and her last name is Katie, K-A-T-I-E. It's a little seemingly backwards, and they call her Katie. But she's done this work so much that she is a person, and I haven't met her personally, but my former coach is her coach. So I know a lot about her other than just like reading her and watching her on YouTube and stuff. I get some good stories about her. She's a person who's done the work so much, this work, that she is done with having a problem. She doesn't have problems with reality ever anymore. She's done with that. So an example of that is so Byron Katie does these workshops where she'll have like hundreds of people show up at a venue that's just like much bigger than this, but she'll just be up on stage in a big cushy chair, and there's another one, and she'll invite somebody up, say, okay, somebody who wants to do some work, and someone says, I'll do it, and they come up, and she's like, oh, so what's the problem? And and they'll say whatever, like, oh, my kid's not motivated in school, and all that stuff. And she'll just work through it, by asking questions to help them discover that's actually not a problem except in your mind because of your interpretation, and you could translate that into anything else that you want. Anyway, the real story here is they're on break. She goes out into the foyer, and this is a true story. A guy comes up to her and puts a gun in her rib cage and says, "Bitch, I'm going to kill you because you're messing with all these people's minds and you're stealing their money." Her instantaneous response was, "Oh, honey, sweetie, you know, if I were believing the thoughts you're believing, I would shoot me too. Sweetheart, I don't blame you one bit." She's calling a dude with a gun in her rib cage that just threatened her life, sweetie. Everybody in her life is sweetheart and sweetie and honey, even the guy with the gun. No, but you hear her response, though. It's fascinating. Isn't it fascinating? If I were believing the thoughts you're believing, I would have shot me already. What are you waiting for? That's her automatic. There's like, she's bypasses the fear. She's reprogrammed herself. She's not afraid of being shot. She's not afraid of being killed. She's not afraid. She chooses that as an option. And I'm not here saying that we should be like that. I'm just saying if that sounds appealing, we could be. If we work hard at the simple practice of paying attention to our auto responses to reality and upgrading them. Okay? So let's get back to the freedom. Any comments or questions on any of this so far? Yes?
It seems like she also acknowledged his feelings, feared for me to feel that way, and opened up an avenue for him to feel differently.
That is so brilliant. You're 100% right. And I keep asking another coach of mine who also works with the same coach that coaches her, what happened? And it's like the end of the story is ambiguous. I don't know if she doesn't tell it. Like, I don't know if she pressed charges or not, but the rumor is that the dude broke down in tears when she aligned with him, which I don't even think she was doing for him. She was just like responding like in a sensible way to her. She's like, well, because he said why. He said, I'm going to kill you, and he gave her the reason why. And she's like, well, I hear that. And I guess, if I was believing that logic, I totally would do that too. So by virtue of all the practice that she's done, she's experiencing reality as it is. Oh, here's an upset because he's truly believing that I'm screwing with people and robbing them of money, which would be a horrible thing to do. I would be upset as well. I love that you just said that. Because we could be thinking about how we can do that, right, as influencers. How much more effective would we be as influencers if we didn't respond defensively? I'm so glad you said that. That's a really great thought, is to imagine, like, if I can develop my emotional mastery to the point where I don't respond defensively. Like, and that's one of the 4 agreements. Don't take stuff personally. Right? Take nothing personally. And how much more how much bigger does our contribution become when we get rid of that emotional weakness? That's brilliant. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments before we get back into the freedom formula? All right. So, how I think governs my states, my emotional states. And we seriously could just stop there. That could be the end. That's the cornerstone, right? I want to become a master of my states. Think, feel. It's a little bit, I write it TFDR, think, feel, do, results. It's the same thing. What's it say on there? Like thoughts, emotions, behaviors or actions, and outcomes and results, yeah. So think, feel, do, results. How I think completely governs my states. My state, right? Every state I will ever experience, every state, emotional state, mood I've ever experienced in my life was the product of one thing and one thing only. It's how I was thinking in that moment. It was not what was going on. It was what I was thinking about what was going on. Marcus Aurelius said that. Right? That if you're feeling anything unpleasant, it's not due to the experience itself, but your own estimate of it, which you have the right to revoke at any time. Now, my states govern how I behave, how I act, what I do, if I do anything. If I'm thinking that something is impossible, I feel hopeless, I do nothing and guarantee a nothing result. Right? And I deal with that all the time as a coach. You know, one of the first questions that I ever ask anybody in my coaching is, what's the miracle that we're creating in your life? Right? What's the great impossibility that we're going to create in your life? And if their thinking is low on the possibility of what they want or having their lives on their terms, which is, how, by the way, how I define success. I also call myself a success coach. Success as defined by having your life as you want it to be. If you're not thinking that that's a possible, or even a probability, we'll say, then you're feeling discouraged. And that governs the action, the quality and quantity of action that you take, which then doesn't govern, but massively influences outcomes. So let's just use like this today as an example. All right? This is, I mean, you could just say this is like a performance. Public speaking, it is. You know it's the #1 human fear? Did you know that? Yeah. People are more afraid of doing what I'm doing right now than they are of dying. We're going to stop talking about that now. No, it's true though. So, okay, so coming into this, say I'm thinking stuff like, well, like I did. Like I love doing this. I'm so thankful that you had what I consider to be a pretty obscure referral, Carrie, from work that I did years ago, that how this came about. That this is my first opportunity to share my wares with educators. And I love that so much. Because this is me maybe opening up a whole new realm for myself, for my passion. You know, I don't have a family. I'm pretty clear I'm not going to have kids at this point. And I believe that my legacy, and I'm not even stretching this, will be what we're talking about right now, is if I can get this into curriculum, man, my life is, whew, that'd be a big deal for me. If I could get this practice, if I could get mental toughness training as fundamental curriculum, that would be a pretty huge win for me. And I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking, I love doing this. I've been doing this forever. This is really meaningful, you know, to me. I've practiced so much. I believe I've got a tremendous level of mastery at it. It's fun as hell. If I'm thinking stuff like that coming into today, how then am I likely to feel? If those are my thoughts, if that's the content that I'm choosing to fill my mind with, then what kinds of states am I creating? Energized? Yes. Competence. And that's a huge one for this. Right? Competence is huge. Right? Enthusiasm, reward, gratitude, all the high-grade states. I'm thinking my way right into them. When I'm creating those states, then how am I most likely to perform? See, again, this isn't rocket science, right? Be really enthused about the simplicity of this, right? The better I think, the better I feel, the better I do, right? Which maximizes the likelihood of me actually having the outcome that I desire. It doesn't guarantee it. There are no guarantees. I used to study astrophysics, and one of the biggest takeaways from astrophysics was that we live in an uncertain universe. It's like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle and all that stuff. We can't truly know things with 100% certainty. Cannot. But we can maximize the hell out of our odds. Right? And that's what we're doing here, is we're maximizing the odds. So what we can guarantee, though, here is that when I think great, I feel great. That you know, it's just like the sun's going to come up in the east tomorrow. Maybe it's true that it won't, but it always has. And it's always been true that when I think great, I feel great. So that's a guarantee so far, right? And then that maximizes the likelihood of me having, being, doing, or getting what I want. Now, you know, there's always the flip side, right? And this is what we've learned to do. Say I came in here today and I was thinking instead, like probably most people do when they do public speaking, is they think disastrous thoughts. Like, what if I go off on one of my patented tangents and completely lose my train of thought? which I'm always doing. I haven't done that yet today. Here I go, I'm doing it right now. I'm reeling it in. Yeah, what if they're just not digging it? What if they're not into it? You know? What if I space out, or, you know, what if I'm late? If I'm thinking all these kinds of things, then what states am I creating with those choices of thought content? Stress, anxiety, incompetence. Sorry?
Remedial.
I'm sorry?
Remedial.
Remedial.
Your performance would be remedial.
Oh, okay, so you're a step ahead of me. So that's right, and that would influence the way I would show up. I've never had an amazing performance when I was riddled with anxiety. Ever. Is it possible to have a great performance when you don't feel amazing or nothing great? Yes, it is. Is it likely? No. Is it going to be consistent? Oh, hell no. Right? And then, of course, when I'm performing poorly, that I'm not getting the result that I want. The result in this scenario is that I want to enjoy myself. I trust the deep intelligence of fun. I write on that a lot. The intelligence of fun. I did a whole interview on that. That might even be a title of an upcoming book. The intelligence of fun. So I want to trust that. I want to have fun, and I want to deliver. I want to know that when I leave here and drive home, that I shared what I considered to be some remarkably valuable tools with people that they can go use to upgrade their lives and their professions and just their experience of life.
So how do you stop yourself? Because like sometimes you don't even know you're being negative until partway down the road.
Thank you for the segue. So,
$5.
yeah. From whom? From me? What do you mean? I gotta pay you for that? That's what I just said. I gotta pay her for that? Well, now I'm gonna stop asking questions. That's negative reinforcement for me. Then it's gonna like balance out. Now I gotta really raise my fees. No wonder that guy charges so damn much. I know why now he was gonna charge so damn much, because he wasn't even gonna make a profit. He's gonna ask all these questions. That's pretty funny. I don't even know what the story is behind that. What is the story behind that?
Well, because I'm mostly an happy person, but I've had situations where...
No, I meant the $5.
Oh, the $5?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I thought you should pay me.
I know. Why?
Because I like meat.
Oh, you're just making that up. I thought that was a thing. No. Oh, you're just making that up. Totally making that. Oh, that's so great. I love your sense of entitlement there. This just got even funnier. So the practice is what's at the bottom of the page, right? Catch, own, and replace. And it is a practice, and it takes a lot of practice. But you can see results after very little bit of practice. So what you're doing is you're catching yourself. And let's talk about it in some other language. And this is language that actually I find is very sticky in cultures that I work with. All right, so remember how we did this exercise where I said think of something tragic and then think of something hysterical? And I said, you basically just traverse the entire human emotional spectrum from dark to light in an instant, right? So that's the spectrum. So let's turn that on its side. So it looks like this. Okay, put the plus up here. This is the low grade states. And over here is neutral. So it's still the range of possible human emotional states. Where do all your states come from? Every single mood you have ever or ever will experience, where does it come from? Thoughts. Yeah, from your brain, but specifically from your cognition, right, from thinking. So we're going to call this the range of interpretation. All right, the possible ways that you can think about reality, right? And this neutral, so you can make the argument for simplicity's sake that there are really only three ways to interpret reality in every moment. in a way that has you feel uninspired, neutrally, or in a way that has you feel inspired. Right? Like a neutral observation. An observation is a neutral interpretation. This is a red Sharpie. I have no charge, plus or minus on that. Right? This is a red marker, and red's my favorite color, so that's a high-grade interpretation. This is cool because it's my favorite color, cool. So that's just an interpretation, right? Or it sucks because it smells. This thing stinks. That's a low-grade interpretation. So those are my three options. And it's like, you know, anybody a tennis fan here? Why are you only? Why is it? So you don't have to be a fan to get the analogy. We'll say like. Roger Federer. We'll say that Roger is serving against Cilic, like this is Wimbledon, and he aces him. All right, and if you don't know what that means, all it means is that he smoked a serve that the dude couldn't even return. Just passed him, got a point, right? So Roger Federer, who aced him, is pumped because he just got the point. Cilic, who just got smoked, is pissed because he just got burnt, and the umpire in a chair couldn't give a damn. So those are three unique interpretations of one event. Right? So, and they're all true to the person who's creating the interpretation. So this is the range of interpretation. And we'll say this middle line, the neutral line, is called the observation line. Right? And again, an observation is a neutral interpretation. All right, so the practice is to catch yourself. Here's the answer to your question finally, is to catch yourself when you're feeling unpleasant. Start to practice exercising your internal awareness so that you don't just go on and on and on down the road in a low-grade state. Practice, like I said, the most mentally tough, happiest, successful people choose to exist in a perpetual state of self-inquiry. Right? Always asking yourself questions like, how am I feeling right now? Put messages on your dashboard. Use the reminder system, on your phones or alerts. Like I have stuff all over my house reminding me of what I need to remember. I'm creating an app with a client of mine, a techie client, on this. So I have text messages. I'm sure that I have some right now. They're here reminding me. There they are, because I saved it as "be present with this," and they're personalized messages to myself so that I don't have to only rely on my memory, so that I can be reminded. And I love that word so much. Is I'm reprogramming the way I'm using my mind, right? So I can be reminded of how do I want to be right now. So how am I thinking? Catch yourself when you're feeling unpleasant. In other words, catch yourself when you're below the O line. This is the O line. And that's the language, that's the nomenclature that I would invite you guys to use in your culture as you, and to invite each other to be accountability partners on this. The more people that I give the green light to say, hey, if you catch me bitter, please feel free to remind me that I have another option. If I say, hey man, get above the O line. And I know what that means. I'll just go, Raj, thank you. Or mind your own damn business. But I have options. But you want to catch yourself. So the practice is catch, own, and replace, right? So I want to catch myself when I'm feeling unpleasant. In other words, when I'm below the O line, when I'm having a problem, when my response to reality is lower than neutral, is worse than like isness. Is. One of my other favorite mantras is ain't bad, just is. William Shakespeare said something like that, where it's like, nothing good or bad happens until you think it so. Right? So it just is. Everything just is until you put an interpretation on it. Right? So you want to catch yourself when you're below the O line. And when I invited you guys to eliminate complaints, what that means is systematically, eliminating your low-grade interpretations of reality. So can you imagine what your life is when you only live above the O-line? Right? When you're not disabling your creative genius with problematic interpretations of reality. So that's the practice. Catch yourself whenever you're feeling unpleasant. Then the second step, and this is huge, this can't be skipped, is ownership. The practice is catch, own, then replace or upgrade. So the second step is ownership. And here's an ownership phrase. I'm not feeling this way because of what's going on. I'm feeling this way because of how I'm thinking about it. And that's always true. That's ownership. That's you taking full ownership of your experience in the moment. Right? I'm not feeling this way because of what's going on. I'm not frustrated because of the traffic. I'm only feeling frustrated because of the way I'm thinking, and I can upgrade that. All right, that's ownership, and then the last step, of course, is to upgrade or replace. Replace what? Replace the thought. Replace the interpretation. And I can go to gratitude. I can do a million things, but gratitude is just an easy, always useful default response. It's a very intelligent default response. I'm thankful for these roads, right? I'm thankful for that car. I'm thankful for where I'm going. Even if I am a little late, I'm thankful that I have this opportunity. You can never exhaust gratitude. And I don't believe that there is an experience where gratitude is not available to you. Even Viktor Frankl, who was in a concentration camp, was able to choose that. That's from his book, Man's Search for Meaning. Okay, any thoughts or comments or questions at this point on anything that we've covered so far? Okay, so let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll move on. So, we could really stop now and comfortably say that what we just practiced is profound. That's like life-altering. And I'm not kidding. When I switched over from being a therapist, from being a licensed therapist, over to a sports psychologist, this is a pretty big shift. One of the golfers, the professional golfers that I started training, had a friend who was suicidal. And he said to me, I want you to work with him because he's seriously ready to off himself. I'm like, dude, that's not my deal anymore, man. I'm working with athletes. And he goes, yeah, I know, but whatever. Just do that stuff with him. Do what you've been doing with me. And I said, man, look, no, because I'm not equipped. Like when I was working for mental health agencies, they got resources for people that are seriously ready to kill themselves, and I'm just in private practice. I don't even have malpractice insurance. I don't want to mess with this. And then he dropped a shame card, and he's like, I'll bring him to every session and be here with him. And he's like, your play. I said, oh, all right. If you're willing to demonstrate that level of commitment to this person, then I'll give it a whirl, but I'm not making any promises. And the guy came in, and he was bona fide suicidal. And I know the deal because I spent years and years working with people in crisis, so I know all the questions, And he had ideation, he had a plan. So I told him, you are a hair away from needing to be hospitalized, and I'm no longer qualified to do that other than just say, go. And his friend brought him every time. So he'd come twice a week, and all we did was what we just did. Okay, but really practiced it and practiced it and practiced it, which was really hard for him because he was so deeply bought into his negativity. He was so habituated into experiencing reality so diabolically, like drastically, that this was painful work for him. Because it was almost like insulting. Because he was so convinced of his problematic interpretation of reality. But he chipped away and chipped away. And he turned it around completely. And then he's become one of my best friends, as a matter of fact, and he got recently his master's degree from Harvard. And now he's buying up all this land in Minnesota, becoming a millionaire in his 30s. It's just great. You know, and all he did was that. So he actually has a testimonial on my webpage. New webpage, launched last night. Very excited about it. By the way, while I'm thinking of that, my webpage is a good resource because it's got my blog on it, and I'm always putting out mental toughness videos that are short but poignant. So you can access those and use them as reminders for yourself, but they're also resources for your students. Okay? Anyone. But these tools will help youth with their academic performance profoundly. So if you want to check it out, I think my website is on the bottom of several of the handouts. Okay, so before we move on, we're going to cover some other tools. But I just started to say that we could seriously stop here and say this was a success if you'll go practice it. So can you tell me that you have total clarity, you're completely, unambiguously clear on what the practice is that accompanies what we've just gone through, the freedom formula, and elevating your state? Who can tell me what it is? What's the actual practice? Because I pledged in the beginning, I'm not leaving here until I know that I have not just talked around theoretically like neat stuff, it's equipped you with actual tools, like real, practical, immediately applicable techniques and practices and disciplines. And I've given you two. They're pretty much the same though. Eliminate complaints, and what's the other one? What's the practice that accompanies? What is it? Yes. Catch, own, and replace. So please sync that. Because I'm pretty sure that we're not going to cover anything as powerful as that. That's not to diminish the other techniques and tools, but they like accompany. The rest of this is going to be meaningless if that isn't in place. That's why I call it the foundation. The other tools are supportive in our quest to take back control of our minds and to use them in skillful ways and masterful ways that have us maximize the likelihood of us being, doing, or getting what we want. But this is imperative for any of that to occur. That you remember the practice. Okay, so I'll say it again. The most mentally tough people, happiest people, successful people choose to live in a perpetual state of self-inquiry, meaning they're always asking themselves questions like, how's my state now? What kind of mood am I thinking my way into in this moment? Can that be upgraded? Is my state serving me in this moment? Or I'm going into an event, what would be the ideal state going into this meeting? What would be the ideal state for me going into this potentially conflictual conversation with a parent whose child is not showing up? All right, or with the teaching coach who's not getting it done. I understand that happens on occasion. Or is that just rumor? And those are amazing. And if we have time, I want to get to some role playing on exactly that, because those, in my opinion, are some of the great. In fact, let's just take a second on that right now, since we're on it. One of the most in my one-on-one coaching, there are tremendous similarities between what I do and what you do. You're an educational coach, especially by design of being online. You really are. It's like really like you're coaching. And part of my coaching is the agreements that Carrie, you mentioned in the very beginning. And you shared so everybody has the link to. Everybody has the link to the audio program called Expectations versus Agreement. And that was recorded. Has anybody heard it? Has anybody listened to it? Okay, so that's recorded by my former coach, Steve Chandler. He's got a funny voice, doesn't he? Hi, this is Steve Chandler. He's going to watch this video. Love you, man. But he is the master of that, and I really want you to listen to that. It's, I don't know, what, like 30 minutes long? And it's profound. I listen to it all the time, reminding myself of how, the powerful distinction between toxic expectations, which we've all been conditioned to have of each other, especially in relationship, and then versus the power of a co-created agreement. So part of my coaching experience, my one-on-one coaching, is I always wrap it up with what I call the agreements conversation. It's the very, very end of each coaching session, and I don't assign homework anymore. I co-create agreements. So I say to my client, all right, we've only got a few minutes left. Let's talk about our agreements. So what is it that, and I coach them through this. I'm like, don't say yes unless you know with 100% of your soul that you're going to deliver. So be stingy with you can negotiate with me. I'll stand my ground, but I'm not going to force you to do anything. Right? I want you to participate in this as an agreement. Because when people have hand in the game, when they've given their word, people want to generally keep it. When they've participated in agreement, they generally do want to keep it because it's powerful and feels good to do so. And the converse is true. It feels weak and powerless not to. However, there is so much value when a client comes back and has not kept their agreements. Well, let me rephrase that. There is tremendous potential value in that if it's handled masterfully. Kind of like what you were saying earlier about, you had mentioned, you said something I really loved about, I think it was Byron Katie. Oh, yeah, that was it. It was Byron Katie when she responded by not taking it personally, right? And it was a tremendous transformational moment. I mean, here I am talking about it years later, right? That's how powerful that is, that it's actually become a story that occurs regularly in people's presentations and in learning. But so when a client shows up and, one of the first things I do is I'll say, so, did you do what you said you were going to do? And if they go no, then I put aside all of my agenda for that day and I say, okay, so now it's time for us to have the integrity dialogue. And I preface it for a long time by saying, you are not being yelled at. You're not being punished. I'm not attacking you. This is me actually demonstrating love for you and serving you. I'm definitely going to confront you because I can absolutely assume by virtue of you demonstrating your willingness to break your word in this context, that means you're willing to break it in other contexts as well, which means you're hemorrhaging power and that's not going to serve you in life. So let's just fix that. And then say, so why? Why didn't you get it done? And get into the conversation. And say, I'm not saying, why didn't you? There's no finger pointing or wavering. No, it's like just like, how come you ordered that for lunch? How come you didn't get it done? Let's just figure it out. And sometimes it's something as simple as organizational skills that just need to be enhanced. Okay, fine, good. Or maybe it's something else. Who knows? There is a reason why they didn't get it done. It could be maybe I didn't see value in it. Okay, well, there's great value in learning in that. Then why did you put your word on it? Did you lack the courage in the moment when we were doing agreements to say, I don't want to agree to that yet because I'm not sure where the value is. So we could have had that, and let's have that conversation in the future. And those are some of the most powerful learning moments in my coaching experience. So I invite you to listen to that audio program and then to explore how it's possible, how it might be possible for you to incorporate agreements. Now, I don't know that that's appropriate for working with like really young kids, but it's definitely appropriate for working with their parents or the teaching coaches. But you'll have ideas on how you can incorporate agreements into your work and definitely into your relationships. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions on what we've covered so far? On anything? Okay, so you totally buy into the fact that no one can make you feel anything. That you totally buy into that no one can upset you. No one can ever upset you.
I want to believe it, but sometimes in real life,
Well, none of this has to do with real life. Who said anything about real life? Absolutely, yes. So I'm glad you said that. That's why it's work. This is work. It's simple, but it is work. And it's the same as working out. It's the same as exercise. It is brain training. And it requires tremendous amounts of repetition. Right? So we have thought habits. I articulated one of mine that I still habitually interpret a lot of things problematically. My default response is very frequently, this sucks or this is a problem. And I practice the hell out of this. But you know what's great? Is over the years, I have gotten so much better at turning it around instantly. Like spending very little time below the O-line. My habits are still there, some. Some aren't. I came home from a trip one time, and I was in Kuala Lumpur, and I came home after like 2 weeks, and my front door was literally open. Right? Is that a problem? Hold on. Slow it down. Slow it down just a skosh. It's a trick question. Well, it's not a trick question. It's a real question. Is that a problem? Yeah, right. Depending on what? Well, it can be if you want it to be. It can be anything you want it to be. It could be, yeah, right. Yeah, like surprise, your electronics are all gone. Woo, let's party. And that's the kind of party it was. No, see, that's all an auto response. See, and I appreciate it. But well, no. Why is that? Why?
because you can get used to it.
Well, there's so many different ways. But why is the auto response? Just think it through. This is the practice, right? And it is tricky. It is very tricky. So this is like advanced stuff. Okay, it's simple in nature, but God, it takes a lot of awareness to even like get to applying it. So why is that an automatic, unpremeditated response to me saying my house was robbed and stuff got taken?
She feels compassion.
Compassion for what? Is there a bad thing that happened that needs compassion? No. That's the I did. Well, those are the facts. I was robbed. My house was robbed. That is a statement of fact. That's an observation. Right? Is it a bad thing?
We assume that it's a bad thing for you, so that's why we're showing it.
And where does the assumption come from that it's a bad thing for anyone?
Maybe she's been wrong.
And why would that have been a problem? Why is it a problem?
They spend money.
Let's really go, this is great work. This is the work. So I'm glad we're doing this. I'm glad we're not moving on yet because this is the real work. So now let me just time out for 1 second and say, reiterate, we are working right now, okay, on challenging our assumptions. Now we can go back and agree with it if you want, because that's your freedom. You get to choose anything. You can have as many problems as you want. They're unlimited. But you don't have to have any if you don't want. That's just an option. That's all I'm here to say. Is it's an option for you to reinterpret reality. If you don't enjoy problems, you can have none.
Was it a problem for you?
It wasn't, and that's why I thought of the story, because I was actually shocked that my reaction was, now I know I was drinking wine the night I left, but I don't think I was drinking that much wine. So I walked in and stuff was gone, and I'm amazed. I was amazed. I'm like, I'm not even upset. I'm not even upset. Like I definitely checked the house to make sure there wasn't anybody there who was going to hurt me. And then when I realized, okay, stuff's gone, TVs and stuff, I'm like, this ain't bad. This ain't a problem. One of the reminders that I send myself on my phone here, let's see if this is it, the synchronicity. Love it. I have like 15 reminders. The one that just came last is, this is the best damn thing that could have happened. I am reprogramming myself to have that response to everything. I said it today in traffic. This is the best damn thing that could happen. And then I figure out why, if I want to. Because I can have it be, that can be true. There's a mantra that every set of circumstances can be leveraged for individual and collective gain, but only if viewed masterfully. Every set of circumstances can be leveraged for individual and or collective gain, but only if viewed masterfully. You can create greatness out of everything and anything. So that was an example. Isn't that funny? Like my house gets robbed and I had no problem. And I get in traffic this morning, I'm like, damn! It's just habits, and we can break them. Habits are very fragile. Habits are very fragile. You know, habits are, neurologically are just neural pathways, which are so fragile. They're more fragile than the hair. You know, and all that is required to break a habit is consciousness, awareness, and then the repetition of an alternative. And my alternatives are coming in my text messages, and you can come up with your own ways of reminding yourself of what are your alternative responses to reality. And this is my favorite one right now, which is practicing going, this is the best thing that could have happened. So I upgrade, so I catch myself, and that's the practice. Without that, you got nothing to do. You can't go anywhere if you're just stuck in it, which most people are. And I tell you that is actually a sad thought, that so many people go through their entire lives being governed by unpleasant emotions and don't even know that they have the option of snapping out of it now without anything being different. That's why this has to get into schools. There's so much unnecessary suffering. Okay, you had...
So we're assigning values to different emotions. So we're assigning a negative value to anger, frustration, and a positive value to the happiness. So, just realistically speaking, if we're on that spectrum, don't we sometimes want to be on that negative? I'm kind of thinking yin and yang. Don't we sometimes want to be on the negative to more appreciate that positive, and also those negative times that I've had in my life have made the good times even better. So
it's your call, and that's it. That's all I got to say. I choose that sometimes. Look, I'm a Philadelphia sports fan, for Christ's sake. How the hell am I supposed to choose joy? Are you really? Not a baby. We can see he understands where I'm going with this. That's hell. I choose, like I follow the, seriously, our teams are all terrible. So, right now. And I have parties over at my house every Sunday during football season. We watch the Eagles lose. and if you saw me on a Sunday, you're like, that dude is not qualified to teach emotional intelligence. Because I choose to believe it matters. I choose to buy into the hype. That's my choice. I know it's meaningless to me. This is meaningless to me. But it's fun for me to believe it matters. So that's an option. We have options, and that's the beauty of all this, is we're totally free. If the anger, test it. I am in no position to give you advice. It's like the question I referenced earlier sometimes when people say, so I'm supposed to be happy when I get a flat tire? I'm like, no, I don't care how you are. You do whatever you want. But just know that you have choices. And that you can choose anger. You're free to do that. And just test it and see, does it serve you? That's what I would experiment with, is to see what comes with this lever, anger. Does excellence come? Do I want to repeat it? And if you like it, then repeat it. Then experiment with joy and humor, and just see what the outcomes are and whatever you prefer, and then you get to choose that. That's the freedom, and that's what's so beautiful. Now, I will add to this. If you really study human peak performance research, it all indicates that when you choose the higher grade state, you perform better. And it's hard to argue with the data. But I do like what you're saying about the yin and yang. So experiment and see what works for you. Yes?
Sometimes anger or very serious frustration actually can move you to a positive thing, because it opens up things that you were ignoring that needed to be dealt with, and enable you to completely turn around into another track. Like, this is not going to happen again. These are the steps I'm going to take.
Yeah, the only thing that the only tiny bit of that I would challenge is that you use language that's passive, saying sometimes the negative events move you to a better thing. No, you do that on your own with an interpretation, because you can respond. You know, you can have an event and you can spiral down. You could just do nothing, or you could spiral up with it. It's all your call. I definitely agree that there can be value. Like I said, every set of circumstances can be leveraged for individual or collective gain, but only if viewed masterfully. If I have a problem with the problem, I'm done. You know? Yes?
I just kind of thought, working with children, do you feel like people are born, like really small children, they just automatically go to the positive because they haven't learned to go down in that state yet? Do you feel like the blank slate, the baby, the child, you know, the first grader, they're like excited about everything. You bring out, you know, a box and they get super excited. And then the older they get, they're moving down and it's harder to get them back up. So do you feel like that? I'm
very encouraged by that. I do. I 100% believe that. I 100% believe that our default position as humans is to choose joy, is to choose spiritedness, right? Is to experience reality in what you can call the abundant mentality. I have a great story about that. I'll tell you in a second. Until we're educated about our limitations, or until we learn what failure means, until we are taught to be self-conscious, until we're taught doubt. So like when we come into this world, I believe we're doubtless. How can you be more mentally tough than that? Like, I haven't been taught yet to entertain the possibility of not getting what I want. But then we master it. It paralyzes people. In my coaching, the number one mistake that I see people make is waiting to move in the direction of their desires because they've got all these nonsense reasons. Here's the story. So I'm actually home in Jersey when this happened, at my sister's house watching an Eagles game. True story. And at the time, she only had one child, Benny, and he was an infant, and he wasn't even walking yet. So she's in the kitchen, I'm in the family room watching the game, and she yells in, "Hey Chris, Benny's coming in there, keep your eye on him." And I say, "Okay, I got him." So the TV's over there, he's coming in, and I had tossed my keys up on top of the ledge over the fireplace, right over here, about 5 feet off the ground. And Benny is like crawling into the room, and he's crawling towards me, and I'm thinking he's crawling to me. In my infinite egoic wisdom. He wasn't. He had, when he was over there, he must have, and I didn't know this until retrospect, he must have seen the keys because they had situated themselves underneath one of these like recessed lights in there, so there must have been glistening. So he had seen this glistening object in the sky. And it became an object of desire for him. And what happens next is so remarkably profound that speaks to your point. He moved towards. He didn't hesitate. He didn't stop and reflect on things like, how the hell am I going to get those? Those are 5 feet off the ground. I'm like, I can't even stand up yet. How am I going to do it? How's that going to work? He didn't pause and reflect upon like self-consciousness stuff like, what if I try and fail? I might look stupid in front of Uncle Chris. He didn't have deservedness, hesitation, like, they're not mine. He hadn't learned any of that stuff yet. So he's free. He's operating from a purely abundant mentality without any questions in his field of consciousness. Desire, move towards, in the direction of. So I like to use another mantra, which is, the how is in the what. The how is in the what. And people like Deepak Chopra, who's one of my favorite teachers, they like to use fancy words for simple stuff. His version of the how's in the what is, inherent within your desires are the mechanics for their own fulfillment. You don't have to say it like that. But it's still true. Inherent within your desires are the mechanics for their own fulfillment. I just like to simplify and say the how's and the what. Like in this story, the what are the keys. The what is it that's interesting, right? And then how in the hell am I going to Get those? This is the how. And that's the number one obstacle that I witness people is coming up against the how obstacle. The number one obstacle that that human beings paralyze themselves with is in the pursuit of life on their terms is not seeing how, learning that that's actually necessary. So what happened was Benny's crawling towards, he crawls past me. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And now I am curious because now he's like right by the brick fireplace. So I'm making sure he's not going to hurt himself. And he's looking up, making little baby noises. And I'm like, what is it that you're doing? And I'm like, oh. I get out of my chair and I'm like, oh, he must want the keys. I get the keys and I drop them and he's got them. He got them. He got them. He manifested his desire with virtual, effortless ease. I did all the damn work. So what were the mechanics, right? His desire was the what? He wanted to go check out the shiny thing in the sky. How's he going to get him? He don't care. Whatever, just move towards and activate the mechanics. In this case, the mechanics were me getting off my ass and handing them to him. But what most of us do is we pause, we hesitate because we learn to, and we don't activate the mechanics. We just operate on the assumption that something is perhaps out of reach. Now the great news is that, and this is what Alan Watts is another one of my favorite teachers from history. We get to return to that with all the cool stuff that we have learned along the way. If we can practice these techniques, we get to return to that abundant mentality. We can return to our natural state of doubtlessness. Have you ever heard the story of the metaphor of Michelangelo's statue of David? So the parable is like this. Back in the day when Michelangelo just finished the statue. Has anybody ever seen David live in Florence? Can you describe it?
Big.
Yeah, it is.
Big.
It's big. It is. It's amazing, right? It's like you just stand there and go, whoa. Because the detail is mind-boggling. It's made out of, is it marble? Granite? It's hard stuff. And he made it with a chisel and a hammer. It's incredible. It's absolutely just amazing, right? Arguably one of the greatest, or the greatest sculpture in the history of sculptures. So anyway, back in the day when he finishes it, the town of Florence is all buzzing about it. It's like, oh, he's up to it again. Guy hears about it, and he says, I'll go see it. He also is blown away by its magnitude and its detail and its beauty, and he goes and he's like, I got to find Michelangelo and ask him how he pulled that off. So he does. He finds him. He says, dude, seriously? How'd you create David? That's amazing. That's so amazing. It's huge and so detailed out of this amorphous block of rock. How did you create it? And he goes, I didn't. And the guy's a little puzzled. He's like, what do you mean? And he says, I didn't create David. He said, David already existed, concealed within the stone. All I had to do is chip away at what wasn't David. And that's what we're doing here. To return, we're chipping away at the stuff we've picked up that's like dead weight, right? That doesn't serve us. Beliefs, ways of interpreting reality that would have us, again, settle, struggle, or worse, suffer. And that's why this is also encouraging to me, because that's really, to me, that's the game of life, is that we get to do that. We're designed to grow. We get to return to our natural state of abundance and infinite possibilities. We're experience the world as a field of infinite possibilities. And choose enthusiasm, or choose frustration at times. Choose whatever you want. You get to choose the path. So, any other? Yes?
I have a question. Kind of going with talking about how the kids, they don't see the limit on possibilities. So how do you guide a child or a student where, there are times that they should not find glee in something. We don't say you have to be happy that you beat your sister. That's not okay. And providing those limitations, they start creating those negative doubts where they okay, I have to stop and think, can I do this? Where you're saying we want to take them past that. So
Yeah.
what would be the appropriate way to provide those guidelines of this isn't, these are okay actions. These are things that are acceptable in terms of not going to hurt someone without creating those doubts.
So my own theory on that, and this comes from having worked with kids with, quote, behavior disorders, which 90% of the case was a kid with parents with parenting disorders, is that there is an intent behind him beating his sister. All right? His decision to beat his sister was a maladaptive response to something that's actually legit. I got to get in. I got to get inside and find out what was the desire and help him discover an alternative methodology that won't cost him that much. And have it be selfishly motivated, not moralistic. You shouldn't do that. That never works. That's never a sustainable method of behavioral change. And this is reinforced when I work with gang kids, because like, that's a tough deal there. Especially when you're like a white boy like me, they're like, what the hell do you know about me? Like, what kind of, so I wanted to align. I had to. If I was going to have any effect whatsoever, I had to trust that whatever was behind the decision to keep stealing cars was legit. They want something, and there's something legitimate about the desire. They just have a maladaptive way of exercise or acting upon it. So you get, and whether it's being acknowledged as powerful is often it. Is simply being acknowledged as a powerful human being, someone with power, someone that makes a difference or can have an influence, can be respected or acknowledged or admired, for being meaningful. A lot of times that's what it is, not always, but there's something. There's always something that if we can get to what it is, then we could, then you can be gleeful about that. I don't want to be gleeful about beating my sister, but I want to be gleeful about the opportunity to grow. The opportunity to honor some truth in me that can be expressed totally differently than that not only costs someone something, but can actually create greater good for all of us collectively. An alternative, because it's like put them on him. Say, what are you getting out of this? Like, what's the value you got out of being your sister? Anybody have an answer? But it's like, now what's the cost? I'm just on your side. Let's do a balance sheet. Let's come up with a smarter way of dealing, of you getting what you want. That's, yeah.
A lot of kids that, they hit middle school and they're like, I don't want to do this, it's pointless, and I can help them learn the value of an assignment, but it's not going to change their mindset. So I want to, because you're right, this is something that our kids should learn. I want to know, how can I do that where I'm not going to be overstepping my educational bounds.
Yeah, no, I hear that, yeah, that's tricky. But what's a resource that I recommend that was like invaluable to me when I was working with the younger kids and their parents? It's called 1, 2, 3 Magic. Has anybody heard of that? It's amazing, right? Is it Dr. Phelan? Phelan, I think, is the author. It's amazing, and all it does is doesn't get theoretical. Because you can't, right, with like little kids. You just want to have them learn that they are powerful because they create consequences. They create, with my decisions, I create this outcome. So it's all about unemotionally having the child discover how they create their lives. It's really powerful stuff. I highly recommend it. Because that could be a tremendous resource, not just for you, but for you to share, for you to share with the parents too. And it's a quick, easy read. In fact, it's super short. It just explains the theory and the practice. And then it's just the rest of the book is all these great examples of how it's applied. So it makes it really practical. It's awesome. Okay. Let's get to the practice. The problem is the gift. Remember, I referenced it earlier when I was asking you to be thinking about what are the things that you complain about most frequently in your lives. So let's have fun with this, because fun is intelligent. There's tremendous intelligence in fun. One of my most despised phrases is, there's a time for work and a time for play. Well, I think that's stupid. There is no time for work. Not if you're interested in being amazing. There's no time for work. You want to make what you do playful. Activates creative genius. So let's make a list. Let's start off with the problem. We've got like space for 2 problems. So think of what are some things that you complain the most about in your life, and list them next to number 1 and number 2. What are the big problems in your world? Did you have a question? Okay. Okay. And see, push yourself to make one, at least one of them, like something that you see as a real serious problem. Not like traffic. Something more important than that. Okay, we're not doing anything beyond that. We're just listening to the problems. We're not converting them yet. So, who is comfortable articulating out loud a problem? Yes?
I chose to make mine professional.
Okay.
Students and parents are apathetic about school and education.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I see how that wouldn't fit well in your world.
Because I am not apathetic about school and education.
Yeah. Okay, so then our next question is it even possible that something fantastic could be created out of that exact set of circumstances? Is that even a possibility? Well, what do you think?
Change it so that they are enthusiastic.
Well, no, just let's have it be a yes or no. Okay, okay, good. So then as long as you have a yes, that's even a possibility, then we can move forward with this practice. If the answer is no, the practice is over, and that will just be a problem for you, and you can have that. But we'll never be able to explore the rest, the opportunity, or the possibilities, right? So we can move forward. All right. So now we can open this up. Can anyone, you included? Well, let's start with you. Can you visualize? Can you even fantasize? And don't worry about being realistic. Seriously, that's one of the dumbest things that we could do when we're trying to reprogram our minds, is conform to what we've been taught is real, because that's actually the problem. We've been taught it's real that this is a problem. So, what is the possibility of something fantastic? Something truly, like, measurably useful and valuable could be created out of that.
Can I envision it changing, or can I envision that there's something useful that they're apathetic?
Either, anything. Can you visualize or entertain the possibility of anything useful coming out of that exact set of circumstances? Could you, like what?
I can envision the student or parent changing their thoughts about it and being a positive influence on others because of that.
Okay. So now it's an opportunity. And do you see that there's true value in what you just said?
Yes.
Okay. And you are open to that as a possibility?
Yes.
So now you've got a project.
Yes.
Not a problem. No, that's the fun. That can be an amazing process. But it will be a horrible process if you have a problem with it the whole time as it is. It will just be horrible. And you may as well just stay with having a problem with it and not get into the project. Because it's not a project then. Then it's just a perpetual problem. But if you can reprogram yourself to actually enjoy it, it's like you have that. And it's not even necessarily an articulated mission out loud, but it's in you know it. And you're going to be in the inquiry, I wonder what else I could do differently. What can I play with here to massage this? How could I maybe strengthen my relationship with them, deepen the trust level, to see if we could dialogue on this and see if they're even open to alternatives? What could I do, some crazy creative thing that I would have never thought of when I was stuck and having this be a problem, just wishing they were different, that might be fun for everyone involved? And that's when creative genius opens up. That's when our problem-solving skills are activated most functionally.
Okay, and I understand what you're saying, and I can see how changing my thoughts to making it a project. But it's also, and maybe I'm not seeing it completely, because that's how I change my mindset. But there's another party in this project.
Yeah.
And my end result depends on the other party, no matter what my efforts are.
Yep. Yeah, but you still have, so you could walk away from that experience, not have them change their mind, you be a different person for having gone through the project, which now changes the way you interface with other people with the same situation. There's going to be an outcome. Maybe not the one you want. And there's another opportunity for you to not have a problem with that. One of the things that we've been taught to believe that really messes us up is not getting what we want is a problem. We've been taught to buy into that, and that is nonsense. Us not getting what we want is simply us not getting what we want. I like to say there's no such thing as failure. There are only results, and all results have value, potentially. Right? So like when I get what I want, the value is obvious. I got what I wanted, and I get to celebrate that. When I don't get what I want, there and only there really is the opportunity to truly grow, which is amazingly rewarding in its own. What's another problem? What's one of the, if you're comfortable saying out loud, one of the things that you wrote down? Okay, thank you.
Some of our family.
Do I have to pay you for that?
No,
Thank you. That one's for free. That's on me.
next one. Some of our family members don't get along with my son's fiance.
Including me. I don't know what the problem is. Okay. Okay, again. Now, did everyone hear what the problem was?
No.
Can you say it out loud again?
Some people don't get along with my son's fiance, including myself.
Yeah. It's true. Well, I wasn't going to be so harsh, but no, you're true. I mean, you're right. It is. Of course it is. I mean, by virtue of her having written it down, she's acknowledging, yeah, I am the one having this problem. So it's a problem for you that other family members don't like her. Including herself. Right. Okay, now, so back to the first question. Do you even see it as a possibility that there could be some value that could come out of this, even if it's fantasy?
Yeah.
Oh, so you didn't hesitate with that?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. We can move forward.
Big project.
And you know what? It's like I want to shoot. I'm going to Scotland on Sunday to play golf, right? I want to play the best round of my life on the hardest course because that's a story, right? So big project, big payoff, potentially. Worst case scenario, huge learning. Isn't that great? You can't lose with that attitude. You can't lose. Do you agree? Because there's value. As long as I'm not attached to getting the outcome that I wanted, like I'm going to do everything in my power. I'm going to operate from the all-in state. Did you guys get the all-in program? My all-in audio? Okay. Well, maybe we could redistribute that. It's phenomenal. It's the best thing I've ever created. And it's about the ability, the all-in state is just one of the many states that we can choose to create. And it's me getting infinitely committed, but not attached. Me infinitely committed to getting the outcome that I want, but not attached to it. Never having my joy or the opportunity for me to grow be contingent upon anything. Okay, so you got that? That's the practice. Okay, there's some more things I want to do today, but we could spend a whole lot of time on that. I hope that you will spend a whole lot of time on that. Catching yourself when you're seeing something problematically. Catching yourself, like kind of waking up out of the, erase kind of from that sentence. Waking up out of the brainwashed state, right, when you're having a problem with anything in your life and asking questions like, is it possible something great could be created out of this? And if the answer is no, then just have the problem. If the answer is yes, then get into the project.
That's the hard part, is realizing the no to the problem. Because I find myself getting into the project way too long of a problem that never could have been solved in the first place. So if I was to do it earlier, never
that hurt.
solution, I wouldn't spend all that time in that project instead of pissing me off.
Okay, so moving right along. So we really do. I want to move along. So now I need some volunteers. I need 8 people who believe that they have exceptionally strong focusing skills. Right on. Come on up. We've got 2. We need 6 more. 3. Take a seat. You got it? 4. We need 3 more. 3 more. Good job. He's already demonstrated it today. We need 1 more. 1 more pin, Rodney. All right. Now, for those of you who just didn't feel like going up front, spread some of those around. Here's one for you. So we're going to do a little experiment, as I said, in your focusing skills. Did you guys get any?
Thank you.
Just one for that table. Any here? Here you go. I'll get some more. Don't interfere, just do it. Did you guys get any? Whoops. Oh, sorry about that. I just stepped on all your belongings. All right. Just let it. Don't have any attachment. Huh? No, you don't. No. Okay, yeah. Okay, so it's an exercise in concentration. So simply hold the string in between your index finger and your thumb of your dominant hand. Rest your elbow on the table, and then bend your wrist over so it's like parallel to the tabletop. And if the weight's touching the table, just choke up on the string a little bit. Rest your elbow on, there you go. And bend your wrist over like that a little bit. Yeah, perfect. And choke up. Excellent. Now zone in. So, like super duper hyper focus on the weight. And listen to me speaking. If you could let that string, do you have more string? Like let it out as much as you can without touching, with it not touching. Now, with all of your attention dialed in on the weight, no takers. No takers here. You guys?
How are you doing it? I'm not a concentrator.
That's awesome. This exercise isn't for me. I don't concentrate. That's pretty funny. All right, so refocus. Get your attention dialed in on the weight in front of you. And in your mind's eye, create an image, a vivid, clear image in your mind's eye of the weight swinging side to side, left to right. Literally, permit yourself to experience that happening in your mind's eye now. See it. Now, staying focused with all of your attention dialed in on the weight, now create an image of it swinging forward and backwards, so towards you and away from you. Literally experience that happening in your mind's eye now. Okay, now staying focused. Now imagine the weight swinging around in a big old circle. See it clearly in your mind's eye. Okay, very good, very good. That's enough for now. All right, well done. Thank you, volunteers. Just stay there for a moment, though. It was what? Yeah. So who here knew that Tempe Mission Palms was built on a psychic vortex? Sedona ain't got nothing on us, baby. Okay, so what happened? It worked. Okay. Would you say that again? Oh, wait, don't say that. I'm going to work up to that. Yes. Hopefully no one heard it. So let's just we'll just state the obvious. So what happened? It did what I said, but more importantly, it did what you thought. Way more importantly. Because that's true, because you thought what I said. So it had nothing to do with me. We're doing spoon bending next. And then we'll graduate up to telekinesis, where I can get the glass. Obi-Wan stuff. Jedi. This is Jedi training. So it moved. It did what you thought. Why?
Because your mind, when it does it, your mind will automatically trigger your nerves to create little pulses in your fingertips that will influence. That's
easily the best explanation I've ever heard of that. Yeah, your hands moved. You're like the Deepak Chopra. That's actually funny. Yeah. She's like the inherent within your desires are the mechanics for their own fulfillment. I'm the house and the what guy. But we're both right. So your hand. Now, did you know your hands were moving? Could you sense that? No. You could a little bit? You know, sometimes people have like a twitch.
It's finer than you could do if you were just doing this. What happened?
Yeah, it was super. Yeah, it was just enough.
Right.
It's like, and this is the infinite, the wisdom of the organism. Some folks call it. It's the power of imagery. That we're always doing imagery, and imagery is nothing more complex than creating a picture in your mind's eye. That's why I was using that language. Right, creating pictures in your mind's eye. But this is really important because the picture is always becoming manifest. We're always unconsciously acting on the pictures. So we're making the stuff that we're thinking about happen. And we don't even know it. Which is why complaining is so stupid. Because it actually reinforces or strengthens the likelihood of the thing that we're having a problem with continue to occur. Because we're giving it psychic energy. We're giving it attention. We're placing our consciousness on it, and then as a result, unconsciously acting in ways that will maximize the likelihood of it actually occurring. So this is just a fun, gimmicky way of illustrating something that's truly profound. I just hallucinated that I was tripping. Can we delete that too? That's a redundancy. I hallucinated that I was tripping. That's a hell of a trip, isn't it? Wow. So the question then is, what are you thinking? Right? Like whatever we're always creating pictures in our mind's eye. It's daydreaming. That's what it is. It's just, but some scientists like to call it experiencing the future in advance. Right? And there's great application for this for training and for preparation. Right? Those are really the two ways that I can use imagery in my life, is to prepare for something, to train for something. Like athletes actually. There's a story, you guys, thank you for volunteering. How about a little love? There's a true story about a guy who was, he was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. He was an American soldier captured, and you know the stories, about how the horrific nature of that. And this guy was kept in a box, took his clothes, barely fed him, just enough to keep him alive, messing with his head every day, threatening to kill him. He's hearing sounds of, war going on outside this little box that is all shrunk up in, smaller than he is long, and he was going nuts. So this guy happened to be an avid golfer. He was like average at best, the weekend warrior, but he loved golf. So what he did, as simply as an attempt to escape the reality of his situation mentally, he just fantasized about playing golf, and he would do it like all day. But what he did was he treated himself to like amazing golf. So he imagined himself playing while he's a prisoner. He's like, at first he's hitting like terrible shots. Like, for God's sake, I'm a prisoner of war. The least I can do for myself is play a little better. So he imagines himself playing great golf, like phenomenal golf, and he's getting really into it, because the more into it he gets, the further away from the reality of his situation he seems to be, right? So he's imagining perfect shots, right, and the emotion involved in it, and perfect outcomes, seeing it and feeling it for hours and hours and hours, weeks and weeks and weeks and months. He gets rescued, and however, not before having lost 80 pounds. He was emaciated, muscles atrophied, totally malnourished. He gets home, gets some of his health back, and of course, one of the first things that he wants to do is go play for real. And guess what happened? He had the best round of his life, having not touched the club in, who knows, 2 years, and having been physically and emotionally tortured, lost 80 pounds and gained some of it back. But he comes back and he has the best round of his life on his first round back, like measurably better. Why? What about it? He was literally practicing. So your hands were moving, well, so were his muscles twitching, his muscles were firing, but he was training his muscles because he was focusing on hitting perfectly, and he knew what that move meant. He knew what it had to do, what it felt like to have a perfect contact, to have a perfect move on the ball, and he was literally getting better. He was literally becoming he was developing muscle memory. Right? So that's how you can use imagery. That's, for your golf game, for training for anything, right? Preparing for anything. And then I do imagery before I come in here. I got a pregame, right? Where I actually visualize myself performing well, like interacting well, being present with you and having some fun, visualizing the outcome in advance before I get on a call where I'm going to be talking to say a decision maker in a multi-billion-dollar company is considering signing a big contract for me to do corporate coaching with them. I am totally visualizing that in advance for a while. I'm visualizing all kinds of scenarios. I'm envisioning myself being needless. I'm envisioning myself coming from a place of pure service and inquiry, if it's an appropriate fit. I'm visualizing myself responding as an expert, and a curious expert to even explore if there is work for us to do without attachment to the outcome. But I'm envisioning all kinds of different scenarios. So I encourage you to figure out ways to apply that skill as well. So let's do a little. Are there any questions on that? I know I'm leaving that a little bit vague right there because of time, but I wanted to at least introduce it. There's again nothing. The complexity of the power of imagery is already taken care of in our bodies. We don't have to do that or worry about it. We can just use it. Envision outcomes before events that you care about. Envision how you want them to go. Envision how you want to be in advance, and as a result, you're maximizing the likelihood of that occurring. All right, folks. That is actually we have like 1 more minute. So I'll do a little summary of the tools that you have, and we've just like barely scraped the surface, but we did cover the mother lode. Again, as I said in the beginning, if I could only spend time with people on one thing, it would be what we did here with the freedom formula and learning how to choose to elevate our state for no other reason than we can, but there are many other reasons to do it. One is to feel amazing. The other is to create amazingness. Right? We have access to every single state and in every moment of our lives. It is a choice. Exercise the choice. It is difficult. I agree. But with practice, like everything, it becomes mastery. Okay? So practice. Catching yourself below the O-line, in other words, feeling unpleasant. Owning it by saying to yourself, I'm not feeling this way because of what's going on. I'm feeling this way because of the way I'm thinking about it. And I get to upgrade that if I so choose. And choose that. Experiment with it. Right? Gratitude is a perfect default. Enthusiasm, any high grade state. Eliminate complaints, right? Practice catching yourself with the problems that you frequently choose to interpret as realities in your life and really give them the opportunity to, just have a totally different relationship with them. See if you can create magic out of the thing that you used to get stuck on and stifled by and paralyzed by. See if you can, like an alchemist, create something beautiful from that, right? And use imagery. Any more thoughts or comments or questions? Thank you, Carrie, for inviting me into this great group. I hope to get to see you all again. I hope this makes your life better.